Hi, welcome. I'm Jessica Murray, the Community Manager for Stairway to STEM. I'm really excited to have Ariane Garcia and Katie Matthews with me today. Ariane is an activist, writer, artist, and autism advocate, and she's also one of our amazing editorial board members. Katie Matthews has a ton of experience working with autistic young adults. She's a part-time speech and language pathologist as well as a part-time professional runner. And they work together creating content for STS, and we're really excited to put them together for a conversation around prioritizing assignments. So without further ado, let me turn this over to Ariane and Katie.
Hi, Katie. I have some questions here that I wanted to ask you. When selecting priority assignments, which is more important, date or difficulty?
What I would most recommend is kind of breaking up any long task into shorter due dates. So thinking, okay, I have a 5-page paper to write. I want to have 2 pages done by this date. I want to have a full rough draft done by this date. I want to be able to edit it by this date. And then once you have those due dates charted out in your calendar, you can kind of prioritize those based on date.
So how would I know what assignments are priority?
There's a couple different ways to kind of figure that out, and one of them is looking at the syllabus that you were provided at the beginning of class. Teachers will typically make it clear on the syllabus or when they actually give you an assignment of how much this is going to be worth. Sometimes teachers will say, okay, write 10 discussion board questions, but through the course of the entire semester, they're only going to be worth 5% of your grade. So that's a clue that you shouldn't be spending hours writing one discussion question because they're each really only worth a percentage point, if that. But if something's worth 20% of your grade, like a final or a midterm, that should be a clue that it's really going to impact your grade, how you do on that one assignment. And then the other thing is kind of thinking about your career goals in your professional life. If there's an assignment that you think you might end up taking a further class in, or you might be presenting to professors, or it's part of something that you might use to get a job, that's a clue to kind of put some more effort into it, make it a priority, and really invest yourself into it, and then that might help you later in life too.
So how can I prioritize my long-term goals and strengths with my assignments?
Think about maybe what you are interested in, what types of things you might want to pursue in terms of your career. And, if you know, I'm really interested in this type of coding and you haven't taken a class in it yet, maybe an assignment might be a good way to kind of get into it and learn a little bit about it and get yourself some background information for a class coming up next semester. Or if there's a certain line of research you've heard about and you're interested in, maybe you can jump in and start learning about it for an assignment. The other thing is thinking about opportunities to work with different professors or learn from different experts. If there's ever a way that an assignment might help you connect with someone and do some networking, that's a really cool thing to think about as well. And then in terms of strengths, thinking about if you're someone who seems to study best when reviewing flashcards, you can think about that as a strength, and as you're going through the semester, you could be creating flashcards, and then you'll have that to study from, and studying won't be so hard when it comes around. Same thing, if you know you're a fast reader, you can say, oh, during lunch, I'll read this chapter. And if you know that you take more time to write and you're going to need hours to write a paper, probably don't squish it in during your lunchtime. So thinking about what you're good at and what you need a little bit more time with can really help you set a schedule and prioritize things so that everything doesn't pile up on top of you.
So is there a rule of thumb to keep in mind?
I would say the biggest rule of thumb is just knowing that nobody really gets it right the first time. If you talk to anybody who has a career that they went through college, they'll probably remember a time they were cramming for a test or that they didn't quite finish a paper up the way they wanted it to. So just thinking that you're not alone in that. There really is no rule of thumb, and you have to find out what works for you. But if something does work, remember that and write it down. And you could even keep track, like, oh, I started this paper 10 days before it was due, and see how that works. Maybe the next time you realize you were crunch time a little bit at the end, you could back it up. Or same thing with studying for a test, just maybe keeping track of what works for you and then replicating it again next time.
And how long should I assign time to study?
Most college classes kind of expect you to study for 2 hours for every hour of class there is. So if a class meets Monday, Wednesday for 1 hour, then over the course of the week, you'll study for 4 hours for that class. With that being said, of course, if there's a big test that week, maybe you'll study more. Definitely be in the habit of reviewing everything a little bit every day, and trying to find that balance so you don't have to do 6 hours one day of a class, because that can be kind of daunting.
Well, that's all the questions that I had for you today. Thank you so much for discussing this with me.
Of course. It's my pleasure.